Hi everyone, this is Ricky Spencer and welcome to another Quest by Community. And today we're deep diving everything into sports and recreation and why it's important to kind of sit back and have a listen to hear why it's important to get involved in your local communities and consider whether you want to go out and participate in a particular sport or recreation activity, or whether you want to get involved as a volunteer or a participant. And today we are very privileged to have Kade Matthews from Proud to Play, who is the leading specialist in community development. Welcome, Kade.
Thanks for having me. I love talking about sports, so I'm glad to be here.
Let's get the listeners to get to know a little bit about yourself. So tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm a community development officer at Proud to Play. I connect people in our community with sport and recreation groups like walking and running and so on. I found sport at a late age, especially in the queer community. So I had a real passion of finding that community and really wanted to spread it to other people and spread the joys of having a support network and teammates and people who are really good friends, often which aren't in a club or a dancing or drinking environment, to other people in the community.
When you said you found sport later in life, taking a little step backwards, when you were growing up, and you mentioned to me earlier that you came from a regional space in Victoria, what was it like looking at sport? Was it something that you felt comfortable participating in?
Yeah, so I felt comfortable participating in sport to a degree. I played badminton from the ages of 13 to 17, something around there. Went to a state level, was quite good at it, but I soon dropped out of sport once I got a job and started, I moved to Melbourne at that stage from Latrobe Valley. I wasn't really comfortable in a lot of hypermasculine sports like AFL. I think I mentioned earlier that my AFL career was running one lap and then giving up. My dad played football. My brother played football. I was not a footballer, so I had that problem. But badminton I was really comfortable in because it was a smaller team and a smaller environment. And I think in high school that also avoided situations for me of being in a locker room full of guys and that sort of masculine environment about, the locker room talk and everything that went on there. And that helped me avoid that situation by being in a much smaller group and not a sport where we're all getting changed in a change room and so on. And for someone that even back then was sort of questioning who I was, even, not even sexuality was, but who I was as a person at that stage, that was a great, way to avoid that masculine situation.
Mm. And how did you find, or how did Proud to Play found you?
So I eventually, like I said, dropped out of sport from when I was a teenager. I was in my 20s and living my best life at the time, but unfortunately I got divorced in my late 20s. And in that post-divorce era where, you go through a process of losing friends, not deliberately, but, that happens in breakups and divorces, and sort of being down on myself and going through depression, I wanted to do something that I could, build more friendships in the community. I wanted to do something for myself, something to challenge myself and have an obligation to bring me out of that depression and give me something to schedule. So for me, I found ice hockey. I have a thing for niche sports and niche environments, and I found that, and I found a whole heap of good friends around there. And I wanted to bring what I found in that team to my friends in the queer community as well. Out of that, after playing for a number of years, I founded an organisation called Southern Lights Ice Hockey, who are based here in Melbourne. They're a queer-friendly, LGBT-friendly team, and that sort of ignited my passion for queer sports and connecting people. So through that, I have a big IT background. I'm a real nerd. I worked for 10 years in corporate IT, but I wanted to do something more people focused and turn that into an actual job where I'm spreading that joy of sports and that connectedness and enabling people in the community to find what I found in sport.
I noticed you're wearing the T-shirt "Proud to Play."
Yes,
That's wonderful.
this is our Trans Day Visibility T-shirt that we did. So we've got the nice logo in trans colours, and we've got I can't see it here, but the support trans kids on the back. I think especially for our trans folks in our community, sport can be a wonderful place to find community. And we hope as an organisation to spread that to as many trans people as possible in really safe environments that we can recommend and sort of help trans people on that journey.
I was sort of looking at your website and it's quite detailed. So tell us a little bit about what Proud to Play is all about.
Our vision at Proud to Play is an Australia that is free of discrimination or fear for LGBT people in sport. We have a lot of barriers to entry for LGBT people wanting to play sport. So 80% of Australians full stop have witnessed homophobia on the sporting field. 50% of trans people avoid sport they would like to play. And a lot of time when we're telling people that, I do stress that it's avoiding sports that trans people would like to play. Not just sport altogether, but there's trans people that want to play sport and don't feel they can. There's also a lot of, like 50% of people hide their identity to teammates and other people around them in sport. So I feel that we've got an Australia where we can't feel that we can be really open with where we are for at least half of us, because we're sort of experiencing that discrimination still, or even that language that exists around us. But in a recent Australian Institute of Sports study, Australians believe that sport is critical to create societal bonds, build support networks. Something like 88% of Australians agreed that was the place of sport to build those bonds, to build support networks, to build support, to increase mental and physical health. But our community doesn't feel safe there. So Proud to Play aims to change that. And we aim to do that through education, capacity building programs, community outreach, and providing sort of individualized support and advice to people. And, whether that be supporting people with problems in sport, like experiencing discrimination, connecting people with clubs that are safe, or just having a chat and trying to change that relationship between our community and sport itself.
And if we've got people listening at the moment, it might be a family who has perhaps a child who's disclosed that they're trans and gender diverse, but they want to participate in a sporting activity. How can Proud to Play assist them?
There's a couple of different ways. So one is that we have a program called Rainbow Ready Clubs that I lead, which is a framework where we lead just general mainstream sporting clubs through a framework for LGBT inclusion, which includes assessing an environment, educating the club and its committee, and engaging them in community consultation and sort of going through an agreement of trying to be better at LGBT inclusion. So we can connect families to those clubs that are doing or have done those programs, so they at least have an understanding, so you're not going in blind to a club and hoping that it's okay. We can also connect some families to queer clubs that have spaces for youth as well. One of the gyms in Preston, Pony Club Gym, is specifically doing classes for queer youth and trans youth as well, that are totally free and aimed at that community. We also just provide generalized advice and connection with, our queer run sporting clubs. Queer Sporting Alliance and Climbing Cuties have programs that are specifically aimed at that, probably not youth as in very young, but sort of the older teen sort of youth area. And they provide that support and have that structure that can support families and make sure those mums and dads also feel really supported that their child is, going to find a welcoming place there.
Speaking of that being safe, does Proud to Play, are they affiliated with, do they have like Working with Children check accreditation?
Yeah, so we do all the child safety standards work. So we all have Working with Children's checks. We have a bit of a process for clubs that we recommend as well. So on a Play by the Rules website, which is where does club education and so on, we have a Creating an LGBTI Inclusive Club course on that website. And any sort of service or club that we advertise, we either have a requirement that they're queer run or queer
Mm.
led, or the club has at least done that course or some education with us. So we're not going to be bringing someone into an environment that hasn't at least done some background in
Mm.
that inclusion. So there's at least someone with knowledge there. And that includes, making sure people have done child safety standards as part of those checks of clubs that we recommend.
I remember when I was telling someone that you were coming in, and it was with a colleague who's a teacher at a high school, and they wanted to pass on to get some information if they were interested, or they had like a need in that school with a number of students who were part of the LGBTIQ community who wanted to participate in the sport. What could be the process? Would they contact your space, and is there like an education person that can help?
Emily Fox does our education programs. Emily is wonderful and has heaps of lived experience as a trans woman who's been through a good bit of AFL and
Mm-hmm.
been at tennis and heaps of experience there. Emily runs our education sessions and is wonderful. We actually have a course for PE teachers, especially.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, so aimed at those education providers, and that sort of steps through giving those PE teachers understanding of the LGBT community itself. It's a bit of an LGBT 101, but also some of that child safety, how to deal with harassment, like what discrimination looks like in that
Mm.
environment, and how to address it, and how to be a good bystander or an active bystander to sort of confront that discrimination. And we also just deliver education to schools in general to provide schools and their staff that background. And our education we have 12 modules of education.
Mm-hmm.
We go everywhere from LGBT 101 to sort of advanced trans and gender diverse programs to writing policy and heavy stuff like that.
One thing I really enjoyed when I was going through the website is you had a section where schools and I guess community groups, and that we'll go into in a minute, can actually download some resources to put around their clubs. How did you develop those sort of resources?
So our resources are mainly due to lived experience and what we see as shortcomings and what we can provide clubs to sort of take those first steps. The most common thing that I hear from clubs whenever I go into them is they don't know where to start,
Mm.
or they're scared of getting it wrong. And that's usually just due to not being part of the community, or seeing, as we know, a lot of the media, especially around trans people and LGBT in sports, is all over the place, especially at the moment, and not a lot of it positive, unfortunately. So we provide a lot of our resources to help people take that first step. So we've got some templates about policies. We've got some posters that people can put up around their club just to
Mm.
signal that they're safe. And we've got that play by the rules course that people can step through. We're looking at expanding some of that elements to do some like trans inclusion packs
Mm.
and information there, and to provide some sort of guidance on for each sport, how, like, what's the policy for each sport that a person can look up. So if you're a person going, am I protected at basketball,
Mm.
they can look up and get a link to that policy to work out what it actually says, and sort of get an idea of how, for lack of a better word, how protected they are in that sport from the discrimination that may occur.
Speaking to a few friends of mine who are in my age, golden 50s,
Yeah.
and some in their 60s, who was asking if they wanted to, say, in their bowling club, what they belong to at the moment, but they wanted to get to become more inclusive and encourage other older LGBTIQ people to participate and feel safe, but perhaps they necessarily don't feel the confidence to
Yeah.
speak to the committee of management in
Yeah.
their club. Is that something that you can assist with?
We do a lot of our work is just advice and support. So if those people in those clubs, we basically have a contact form on every one of our pages for this reason. So if wherever you go, you can get in contact with us. And part of that is that sometimes our things are member driven. Like, we're a grassroots organization. We go from bottom up most of the time. And we know that that's how it happens in our community, and getting support for the queer community is going and forcing that change as a person from the bottom up. So we can, if they send a query to us or give us a call or give us an email, we can connect with them. We're happy to advocate for them, to give them advice. We're happy to come and have a chat to the community, well, whether that be through Zoom or going out in person. We just want to do whatever it takes to sort of start that conversation and have that understanding that's going on, whether that be through a bowling club, a walking club, you know, even if you're really quite older and in a nursing home or something, it's activities that are occurring there that could be more inclusive. Like, as long as you're moving, we want to have a conversation to make that and be enabled for LGBT people.
And I love that how you said, as long as you're moving.
Yeah.
Because, and that's something I guess I want to encourage our listeners. You know, if you are somebody who's older, or you have a family member or a friend who's older in a supported accommodation space, perhaps they could reach out to Proud to Play and make a connection and maybe start up some sort of a community for older people and join Proud to Play.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel that, especially with our older members of the community, is that there has been a lot of trauma in sport historically. Not to say that it doesn't exist now, but it's you know, like in a lot of things in our community, we've came a long way, and there's a lot of trauma that exists. So a lot of the challenges in getting the elders of our community active is just sort of finding an environment they're comfortable in and being able to network people together to sort of reach that mass that we're sort of bringing people together, because we don't hear from a lot of the elder community, because sport's just been a no-go zone for a lot of them, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's unfortunate. Would love to change that, but it's definitely a challenging environment that we're trying to change. But the more people that get in contact with us and the more people that we can connect and empower, then hopefully we can change that.
It starts today, everyone who's
That's right.
listening out there. And going on today, but also for people with disabilities and who are queer.
Yeah.
So can you maybe give us a little bit of info? If, say, you have a particular mobility or disability, could Proud to Play assist in connecting you to clubs that are safe to be involved in?
Yeah, so there's a couple of our queer-run clubs that do have disability-focused programs. I know that the Melbourne Argonauts had a Grant, who was para-rowing out there for a while. One of our Proud to Play ambassadors is Alexandra Viney, who's a para-rower who won bronze. Sorry, Alex, if I got that wrong, in Tokyo. And so we have this sort of intersectionality approach. We also have a partnership with Disability Sport Australia. So we're really trying to work on our intersectionality, not just for disability, but other sports. We really want to sort of support those people, so that we don't have any active programs that we run there, but we see the importance in just being able to empower people with any sort of intersectionality to get them involved, and through our networks we can get them connected with different clubs and things like Disability Sport Australia, where we know that they'll be protected because they've done education with us and we've done education with them to sort of combine our forces.
When we're talking about being more inclusive and supporting all people, that you've actually instigated a wonderful program in terms of transgender awareness in sport.
Yeah.
Could you tell us, our listeners, a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we recently developed our Icons campaign. So it's just a bit of a campaign that we're trying to tell a story that trans people have always existed in sport, in Australian sport specifically, because there's a lot of rhetoric at the moment about trans women in sport and trans men in sport, and unfortunately the discussion a lot of the time is whether they belong. And it's approached like this new issue, like all these people are transitioning, they're coming into women's sport, and this is a new issue. At a community level in sport, which is what most of us play for fun, that anyone who identifies as a woman or a man or non-binary should be able to play what they're most comfortable in. So what we're trying to tell with this Icons campaign is going back all the way to the past and telling stories from the all the way back to the 70s and 80s and 90s
Mm-hmm.
about these pioneers who have come through who are trans or non-binary, and telling a bit of their story, a bit of the struggle that they went through, but also a bit of the triumph about how they overcame what was put in front of them and how they enjoyed the support that was around them. Most of the clubs did enjoy that. The clubs around them supported them and empowered them. We want to sort of say that like these people are important parts of our sporting landscape, and they're pioneered. And in some cases, I feel that a lot of those people deserve a lot of respect for that. That, you know, we don't celebrate those people that have, you know, especially in the 70s and 80s, who have stepped out as a trans woman or man and played sport in an environment that was hostile then, but still found that community and support around them at that time.
As a previous high school teacher, for me, that is wonderful because I can see that the resources that you've developed could be taken into the classrooms and allow students of all genders and all sexualities to kind of explore that and understand that our presence has always been there.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, perhaps it wasn't discussed or disclosed. And it should be celebrated, that everybody has a right to participate in sport.
Yeah, and I think that's what the conversation has to be. Like, you know, we barely get news about gay men. Like when a gay man comes out in sport, a gay cis man, it's a big deal. Like it's on the front page of our papers. Like recently, Josh Cavallo and you know, things like that. And that's wonderful that those people are leading the way. But there has been trans people, there has been women, there has been gay men, Ian Roberts back in the 90s,
Absolutely.
and Sally Shepard, and, you know, Ricky Codlin running in the 90s and stuff like that.
And also bisexuality, because to me, like having done a bit of work in masculine spaces in different areas, one thing with football in the AFL and VFL before that, there's sort of like an almost no-go zone when it comes to men coming out, and there's been a focus on gay men, but I always feel like, well, what about men who are bisexual or trans? And that's sort of, we need to really understand, well, why is that? And because we've got our women's football league who are more inclusive and more open and less perhaps perceived as less threatening. And this sort of leads me to a quick conversation I want to have that we were having out before, like playing sport. Like, why is it? And I think if we can sort of have that little bit of a conversation, that when we're young, we're kind of allowed, well, we're given the opportunities to play together in all genders. So can you tell us, why is there some resistance when it comes to sport? At what point is there a problem, do you think, at sport?
There's sort of three main areas of sport, which is community sport, which is what we play as juniors, what we play as kids, what we play as generally as adults, where we just are doing it for fun and enjoyment, going down to our local club, playing games, you know, so on. Then we sort of have elite level sport, which is more what we're talking about: state teams, national teams, Olympics, Commonwealth Games. And then we've got professional sport, which is our AFLs, A-leagues, you know, big teams. They're all driven by different things. Community sport, we believe, should be for everyone. Like I was saying previously, in our ice hockey team at Southern Lights, in our first ever team, we had trans men, we had trans women, we had non-binary people, we had cis men and cis women. We had the whole rainbow in a team of 14 people, which was our original team. And that's because we were enabled to play mixed. And because it was mixed, no one cared. Like, it was just, who wants to be in the team? Good, you're in. Like,
that's good.
That's it. Generally, a lot of sport is played, you know, it might be gendered, or you might need to select a gender, but mixed sport especially is really good until you sort of get to sort of that state, national level, because that's when you start going down that competitive track where it's for medals, for money, for recognition. And that's when you start falling into the traps of, you know, things like testosterone readings and stuff like that, where it starts to fall apart. I think that the utopia of the future of sport, that'll never happen in my lifetime, I don't think. I'd love to say it, is that we do away with gender altogether and have a sort of measure somewhere else, weight classes,
Mm.
mass. I don't know what the solution is there, because the person's gender or identity shouldn't be the defining factor of whether they can play sport or not, and when and where they can play sport or not.
So for all our listeners, as we wrap up, anyone who's interested, even as a spectator, to jump onto the website, to make that commitment, have a chat, yarn with somebody, perhaps, and maybe, come to an event to make friends.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And just before we wrap up, the other one I know you wanted to mention is that for those who have friends or listening to this by other means, other channels, that you're looking also to connect with people in other states.
We're always looking to increase our reach. I know that Victoria and New South Wales are generally well served in their queer communities by organisations like ours and others. But we know that a lot of areas like South Australia, Queensland, WA, Northern Territory, Tasmania, ACT even, is not as well served, especially by a body like ours. We have a big effort at Proud to Play to try and decentralize a lot of our work so we can get involved in those states. So if anyone there has a passion for running a program and wants to sort of run it with us, or if anyone if you're in Queensland and you don't think that we can help you, then let's get in contact and work out how we can help you. Because we are an Australian organisation. We're very small, but we want to have that impact Australia-wide.
Kade Matthews, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Quest by Community. This is Ricky Spencer signing off for today.
Thank you.